Part 50. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Ganxiao. Chapter 511. When the sun's twilight is still on the coastline, making the final struggle. The lights at Morgan's house are undoubtedly the brightest on the block. As one of the top businessmen in Amontes, the Morgan family's business is very prosperous. This is all due to Mr. Morgan's shrewd investment. Whether it is in automobiles or heavy industry, the Morgan family has made a lot of money. But when people mention the Morgan family, they often add the word watch repairman while being envious. Because the Morgan family's fortune began as a watch repairman. It is precisely this that makes it difficult for the Morgan family to truly integrate into the circle of the upper-class elite. Even though he spends a lot of money every year to raise funds and build the church in Amontes, the church seems to only regard him as a stupid lamb. Even though the Morgan family often donated generously to the poor municipal finances, the municipal government could only award him the title of an outstanding citizen. Even though he donated a teaching building to the local aristocratic college, his daughter Josie was still not qualified to enter the college. Because in people's eyes, the Morgan family is still just a watch repairman, an upstart standing at the forefront. Until one day, a small local family offered an olive branch to Mr. Morgan and asked their son to marry Miss Josie, which would improve their family's status. This was originally a good thing that Mr. Morgan asked for, but when he found out that the other party's son was not only a romantic drunkard, but also had a previous marriage and beat his wife until she could not take care of herself for life, Master Morgan decisively rejected the other party. But it was precisely because of this incident that Mr. Morgan was inspired. A genius idea came to his mind. The empire had been filled with down-and-out nobles for hundreds of years, and he could choose one of them to marry into his family. This can also increase one's own worth, and at least allow the next generation of the family to completely get rid of the hat of watch repairman. So Mr. Morgan spent a lot of money to spread the news and mobilized almost all the socialites to inquire about the news. As a result, before the news came back, the Corleone family incident broke out. After Master Morgan learned about the drastic changes in the Corleone family, he began to think about it. For this, he waited for 2 full years, determined to let Kevin, the heir to the title, suffer some hardships before coming to talk to him. It was under the operation of Mr. Morgan that Su Tong came to the city from his hometown in Corleone. At night, dresses of various bright colors are constantly pouring in under the lights. Many wealthy and distinguished guests who were once unable to be invited by Mr. Morgan have impatiently flocked in. The reason for this is precisely because many people on the streets today are discussing how noble and extraordinary this guest from afar is, which has attracted the interest of many people. Look at the carriage in front of Master Morgan's house. The driver is still guarding it like a loyal guard. When people tried to get some more information about this distinguished guest from the coachman's mouth, the coachman raised his head and told them proudly. Roll. The banquet has not officially started yet. The famous Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra has already played moving symphony music on the lawn of Mr. Morgan's house. This is one of the best orchestra leaders in the empire. Ordinarily, Mr. Morgan wouldn't be able to invite such a band to provide music for tonight's banquet. After all, art that is tainted with the smell of copper is no longer art. But the shrewd Mr. Morgan invited the orchestra in the name of the Corleone family. More importantly, Mr. Morgan gave too much. The price of £300 is simply a sky-high price. Who can resist being tempted? Damn, the air here is really uncomfortable. I told you, only a watch repairman would like the pungent smell of tobacco oil in the city. The lady held the wine glass in her hand and chattered endlessly. But the other hand did not forget to take out the exquisite pastries from the fruit plate on the side and put it in his mouth. These pastries are definitely made by Alice's family. Their cakes are the best in Anmantes, but the prices are a bit ridiculously expensive. It turned out to be a poor orphan, really pitiful. A woman walked out of the woods on one side and wiped the marks on her lips with a handkerchief. When these ladies saw her, the smiles on their faces turned evil. Stacy is a widow from a noble family, but she is also a famous social butterfly. They all know more or less that their husbands have an unclear relationship with Stacy. The most important thing is that Stacy and the Morgan family are actually related. Mr. Morgan's current wife is Stacy's biological sister. Even though they were very unhappy with this damn slut, their strong curiosity still led them to gather around and ask for news about the mysterious guest. Stacy took the wine glass and rinsed her mouth to make sure there was no bad smell left in her mouth before sharing the news she got from the Morgan housekeeper. The Corleone family. After learning the identity of tonight's protagonist, everyone was surprised and immediately understood what Mr. Morgan was planning. After all, this kind of marriage is not uncommon. The identity of a down-and-out young earl was exchanged for the wealth of the Morgan family, which made everyone feel faintly disappointed with this distinguished guest. If the Morgan family hadn't spread the word in advance and sent a valuable souvenir to every guest tonight, these ladies would have turned around and left. It's a good idea, but I don't want to do it in vain. Such a boring trick is really boring. Stacy held up the wine glass with a meaningful smile on her face. Following her gaze, she saw a young and handsome boy chatting with several ladies from an unknown family. "What are you up to?" After hearing Stacy's words, several ladies looked at each other and asked impatiently. The corners of Stacy's eyes were raised slightly, and after casting a seductive look at the young man in the distance, she gently lifted up her skirt with one hand, and said in a small voice, "Of course, let's make tonight even more special, it's just fun." Just behind the door that was separated from the banquet, Su Tong was already ready to appear on the stage like a bride appearing as the finale at a wedding. Next, according to the rhythm prepared by the Morgan family, when the door opens, he will become the focus of the banquet. She put on the new clothes prepared by the Morgan family. The black dress was inlaid with thousands of diamonds and two priceless cat's eye gem buttons, which raised the price of the dress to a higher level. A golden mark was branded in gold on the cuff, which was the emblem of the Corleone family. It can be seen that the Morgan family has made meticulous preparations for tonight's banquet. Of course, this is also related to whether Kevin Corleone can become the new business card of the Morgan family in the future. Master, please remember that even if the Corleone family has temporarily lost its glory, you are still the master of Corleone and the hereditary earl. This is the glory that our ancestors, following Alfred the Great, fought for, and is the glory of any other family, an achievement that no one can erase. Shaer was still repeating the final brainwashing in Su Tong's ears. Confronted with Char's chatter in his ear, a smile gradually appeared on Su Tong's face. He patted the back of Shaer's hands and turned over his calloused hands. He saw that his palms were already covered with rough calluses. This made Char's face stiffen, and he looked a little unnatural, because as a butler of a wealthy family, such rough hands could not be used on the stage. But he quickly took out a pair of white gloves from his pocket and prepared to put them on. However, Su Tong took away the gloves first. "Char, have you ever heard a sentence?" Char was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, he felt that the young master was a little different from before. At least, he had not seen such a smile on the young master's face for a long time. "Well, yes, since the master was shot." Just when Shaer wanted to ask Su Tong what he meant. Outside the gate, there suddenly became a commotion, and even the moving music stopped. "I thought he was some distinguished guest, but it turned out to be just a poor boy brought from the countryside, ha 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 ha." The harsh ridicule was clearly heard by Su Tong and Shaer behind the door. The two were startled and looked through the gap in the door, only to see a drunk young man shouting loudly while holding a glass of wine. "Don't you all know that the Corleone family has been torn apart? It is said that the heir not only did not receive a penny, he was even driven into a pig pen in the countryside." As soon as this statement came out, everyone was shocked. Immediately, someone started laughing in a low voice. Although the laughter is small, it is contagious. When more and more people start to smile, it is inevitable that the sound will be louder. Who is this guy? Su Tong calmly looked at the servant aside. It's the mayor's child, Durham. The servant carefully looked at Su Tong, fearing that Su Tong would turn his anger on himself. This bastard! I'm going to kill him. However, Su Tong's anger did not appear, but Shar, who was the butler on the side, had already turned red with anger. This was definitely an insult to the Corleone family. If it had been 2 years ago, this guy and even his family would have suffered. To the Corleone family's crazy revenge. After cursing, Shar finally seemed to remember something, turned around and looked at Su Tong. Let's go. Walk. Leave immediately. Shar nodded solemnly. The honor of the Corleone family must not become their victim. If you don't come forward at this time, there is still room for maneuver. Saying this, Shar was about to take Su Tong and leave as soon as possible. However, Su Tong was like a magic needle that fixed the sea. He was fixed there and could not move no matter how much Shar pulled. I saw Su Tong patting Shar on the shoulder. Don't worry, wait and see. After all, Master Morgan hasn't come yet. Master. Shar was desperate. He didn't expect that the young master would place his hopes on this idiot Morgan at this time. This profit-seeking businessman would definitely blame the young master for his failure. Shar could already foresee the scene of them being driven out of Morgan's house in embarrassment. The laughter outside became louder and louder, and now Mr. Morgan, who was originally discussing with the bishop whether he could officiate the marriage for their family, had to rush over. When I heard that Durham was going crazy with wine, revealing to everyone the current poverty and decline of the Corleone family, and had to marry into a merchant's family for bread and milk. Mr. Morgan's face turned dark instantly. He can't stop Durham because he is the son of Mayor Randall. Mayor Randall was standing aside with the church bishop at the moment, watching with cold eyes, as if he had no intention of controlling his son. Now Master Morgan was even more annoyed. Asshole, what are you doing? As if he noticed Mr. Morgan's unkind eyes, Mayor Randall immediately reprimanded him. But my heart was already filled with joy. Logically speaking, they shouldn't be such evil people, but the Morgan family's financial resources are so amazing that if such a person can successfully squeeze into the upper class, it will be of no benefit to him at all. He may even have a strong opponent in the next mayoral election. This is what he doesn't want to see. But Randall didn't know the identity of the distinguished guest invited by Master Morgan, so he didn't dare to act rashly. Seeing that Master Morgan was willing to donate 30,000 gold pounds to the church in exchange for Bishop Bertram's support, he could only feel anxious. At this time, his son sent a divine assist. How could he not be happy in his heart? Everyone can see Randall's rough acting skills. Mr. Morgan's face turned green and white, and the anger in his heart was about to explode. Ka-ka-ka. The door that should have been left open at the climax of the music as the highlight was slowly pushed open. Master. Shar's face changed drastically and he hurriedly tried to stop him. He knew that when Kevin walked out at this time, he would never be greeted with stunning eyes and applause, or even humiliation, and finally left in despair. If this is really the case, the last remaining dignity of the Corleone family will be ruined. However, Su Tong still opened the door in front of him, turned back to look at Shar, and the smile at the corner of his mouth gradually brightened. There is a saying that if I debut, I will reach the peak. Although the update is a bit late, both chapters have a lot of updated words. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 512. As the door was pushed open, Su Tong's figure was revealed in front of everyone. All eyes present were focused on him. The dark black tuxedo shimmered with crystal light in the night. His golden hair, dark blue eyes, and the confident smile on his face all made the ladies around him shine. It has to be said that Kevin has an excellent skin. In this era of chaotic styles, good looks are also a rare asset. At least at this moment, the ladies have stopped talking and making noise. The calm and confident aura of Sutong is also gradually rising, activating the Kimen of Life Eyes, and stepping on the most appropriate position with every step, making himself in harmony with the surrounding environment and lights. With the help of Minji and Kimen, Sutong can see that everyone has different fate and luck, as well as different auras exuding from their bodies. He looked around like a king looking around, and finally fixed his eyes on Mayor Randall and Bishop Bertram. Interesting. Mayor Randall has a very strong aura, while Bishop Bertram beside him seems a bit insignificant and has a very soft aura. However, what is interesting is that Bishop Bertram's destiny is surprisingly strong, with golden there is even a shadow of an angel on the cross. In comparison, Mayor Randall's destiny seemed so small and weak. Next to Bishop Bertram, his destiny could only be crawling under the golden cross. Not just Randall, but most people here, including Mr. Morgan. It seems that the power of the church is far stronger than one thinks. As if he noticed Sutong's gaze, Bishop Bertram was startled. His eyes gradually became sharper. He felt the aura of darkness, which was an evil force. Monster. However, when Bertram focused his eyes on Sutong, doubts, even confusion gradually began to appear on his face. Of course, these subtle changes in expression were not noticed by Randall. Oh, praise the light, I thought there was nothing left of the Corleone family, but now it seems that you still have a good face. After being stunned for a short time, Durham immediately began to continue taunting. But Sutong had already passed by him, without even looking at him from beginning to end. This made Durham startled, and he felt the humiliation of being ignored. He reached out and grabbed Sutong's shoulder, intending to teach this poor boy from the countryside a lesson. Arrogant guy, I'm talking to you. However, before his hand could even touch Sutong, a black crutch hit the back of his hand hard. Dolem instinctively took his hand back in pain. But then the black cane hit him in the face, slamming Durham, who was already unsteady, to the ground. Blood overflowed down Durham's face for a moment, which undoubtedly caused the screams of the ladies present. They stared at Durham, who fell on the ground with their eyes wide open. Instead, they clenched their hands tightly in excitement. On her own skirt. It seemed that they were more excited about the blood splashing than Durham's pain. The old Shayer stood behind Sutong with a cold face, took out a white silk scarf from his pocket, wiped the blood on his cane, and threw it on the ground. As the butler of the Corleone family for 40 years, even though he was just an ordinary old man, the murderous look in his eyes still made Durham tremble in his heart, and he felt a chill in his bones. Shar doesn't agree with the young master's actions, but if someone dares to hurt the young master, he will definitely make the other person pay the price with blood. Durham didn't even dare to look at the old man in front of him, and could only focus on his father Randall. Sure enough, when Randall saw his son being knocked to the ground, the expression on his face instantly turned sinister. However, the clever Randall did not vent his anger on Sutong, who was walking towards him. Instead, he stared at Sutong fiercely. On the side of Mr. Morgan, who was already stunned. Mr. Morgan, you openly attacked my son like this. I hope you can understand that the price of doing so is definitely something your family cannot afford. For a moment, Mr. Morgan panicked. He knew very well that Randall was deflecting the conflict and putting all the blame on himself. As a businessman, he knew very well that the most important thing he should do at this moment was to immediately sever ties with these two guys, take off their clothes and throw them out, and then immediately donate money in the name of Durham's treatment. A large sum of money in exchange for Randall's understanding. If you just do this, everything you have prepared for tonight will be in vain. No, it should be a laughing stock. Tomorrow morning, the entire streets and alleys of Amontes will spread this matter with added fuel and jealousy. But at this moment, Mr. Morgan suddenly noticed Sutong's calm smile, and even cast an encouraging look at him. Damn, what is this guy doing? As soon as they walked out of the Morgan house, they would be dead in the streets tomorrow morning. But, why, there was no trace of fear in his eyes. Is this still the Kevin Corleone he knew? Mr. Morgan has been quietly paying attention to the heir to the Corleone family for the past 2 years. After Kevin's father died, the child seemed to have fallen into some kind of panic and locked himself in the building every day. If it weren't for the care of the housekeeper around him, he would have starved to death in his ancestral home. The young man in front of him seemed to be very different from the young Earl he knew. Besides, this is Amontes, not the headquarters of the Corleone family. Wouldn't he be so naive as to think that his status as an Earl could really make him happy here? For a brief moment, 100,000 whys flashed through Mr. Morgan's mind. But time did not allow him to think too much. In the short moment when their eyes met, Master Morgan already understood that he could no longer retreat at this time. He responded forcefully, "Mr. Mayor, they are my honored guests." As soon as these words came out, Mr. Morgan began to regret it. Even Randall was shocked and couldn't help but sneered, "Dignified guest? Mr. Morgan, I now feel that you are an unreasonable idiot. They are just." Randall's hand was about to point at Sutong, revealing the fact that the Corleone family was no longer in name only. Randall was suddenly stunned. Seeing the strange expression on Randall's face, Mr. Morgan turned his head in confusion and followed Randall's hand. Suddenly, a scene that Mr. Morgan will never forget appeared. Bishop Bertram, who was wearing a priest's robe, actually took the initiative to come forward, knelt down on one knee and kissed Kevin's ring. The pious voice trembled with excitement, "Please forgive me for my crime. If we had known that it was you who was coming, we would have welcomed you personally." Bishop Bertram's words instantly silenced everyone in the audience. They couldn't believe their eyes and ears for a moment. That is the bishop of the church. Even though the church has never participated in any political and people's livelihood issues, in an era where theocracy is supreme like the empire, it is not an exaggeration to say that the church is the one who controls the empire. Even if Bertram is only a regional bishop, if he is willing, any so-called powerful person will crawl under the sanction of his divine power. Randall knew very well how much power there was behind the friendly face of the Lord Bishop. But at this time, he actually knelt down in front of a declining Earl and kissed his ring face. Is that an act of swearing allegiance? This scene is too incredible. As everyone knows, Bertram's heart is truly in turmoil at this moment. When the little Earl walked out of the door, he still suspected that this was the disguise of a certain monster, and he was even ready to purify the monster. But until Sutong approached him and showed the ring on his hand in front of Bertram. Only then did Bertram notice that the black ring was the divine ring that symbolized the authority of the church, the angel's tears. This is an artifact that only the archbishop will hold. Even if it can only simply inspire the most basic holy word shield, as the tears of an angel, its symbolic meaning is irreplaceable. What shocked him even more was that he felt that the holy and holy breath hidden under the dark aura was the aura of the Archangel Michael. Bertram was only briefly shocked before he made such a shocking move in such a hurry. In fact, what Bertram didn't know was that the sacred and majestic aura on Sutong's body came not only from the aura of the Archangel Michael, but also from the angel's tears. Another reason is that Sutong's prop card was a reward obtained after settling the previous scenario world. Advisor to the Holy See. The holder will receive extremely high authority from the Holy See at any time. Although there is no detailed explanation in the entry, you can tell just from the literal meaning how convenient this prop card will bring you. Archbishop Evelyn is at Amontes Church. Please allow me to inform him. I think he will come as quickly as possible. Hiss. When Bertram said these words, everyone felt their scalps numb and goosebumps all over their bodies. Barrent is the regional bishop and already has extremely high authority here. Archbishops, also called cardinals, only have 12 seats in the church. Their status is second only to the Pope. Stamping their feet is a terrifying figure who can cause earthquakes throughout Amontes. But from what Barent said, it seems that even if the Red Archbishop comes in person, he will be polite to this pretty boy. For a moment, Randall's brain was a little weak. Didn't it mean that the Corleone family was ruined? Could it be that what I knew was fake news? Mr. Morgan on the side was numb. He had sent people to monitor him for 2 years. Could it be that the dogs were all monitored? Damn it, those idiots who took the money but did nothing must be fooling me. I will throw them into the sewer to feed the rats. Thinking of this, Master Morgan has begun to constantly think about whether he has neglected Master Kevin. After thinking about it carefully, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that I had done a good job, although it was a bit abrupt. In the completely opposite moods of the two, Su Tong finally helped the bishop, who was half kneeling on the ground. No, I plan to live here for a while. During this period, Mr. Morgan will take care of me. It was his piety that moved me. He is the most faithful servant of the church. Su Tong imitated UnlimitedFlow's tone and said. As soon as these words came out, Mr. Morgan beside him was already trembling with excitement, and his pious eyes seemed to be looking at an angel. Sure enough, Su Tong was highly recognized by Barent. Yes, Mr. Morgan's contribution to the church has proven his piety to the church. In fact, Barent was also murmuring in his heart, could it be that Mr. Morgan's donations over the years really moved the Lord God? Otherwise, how could the angels descend on his family? Su Tong did not continue chatting with Barent. Because he has received the prompt from the main mission. Main mission 1, please start your performance. When completed, your evaluation will be SSS. Ding. You get the highest rating in main mission 1 and unlock special achievements. After completing this scenario world, achievement rewards will be settled separately for you. This is the first time Su Tong has heard of achievement rewards, but it sounds good. After saying that he was tired and needed a rest, Su Tong turned around and walked back to the door with the help of Barent. Just when he was passing by Durham, Su Tong suddenly stopped his steps and looked at Durham coldly, which made Durham suddenly feel like a disaster was coming. You have insulted the honor of the Corleone family, and I will not let it go. As soon as these words came out, even Bishop Barent's eyes became unkind. At this moment, Randall felt a chill all over his body, and an unprecedented fear swept through his body, even permeating his entire pores. Middle. Sir Kevin, this must be a misunderstanding. Randall screamed and rushed forward to explain, but Su Tong did not give him this chance, just as he showed arrogance just now, as if no one except Bishop Burund was qualified to speak to him. After watching Shar slam the door shut, everyone suddenly woke up as if from a dream, and the pious smile on Barent's face was covered by a thick haze. He walked to Randall and his son and said, "Go back. Your Majesty Bishop. Please believe me. My devotion to the church will never lose to anyone. Tomorrow I will issue a new municipal plan to increase spending on church maintenance." Randall grabbed hold of it as if he was holding on to the last hope, and reached out to grab Barent's robe, but Barent easily dodged it. When Barent's cold eyes examined Randall's bewildered expression, he sadly discovered that this fool had not yet understood the seriousness of the matter. If nothing else happens, the director of the Inquisition will personally visit you early tomorrow morning. Cherish your last chance to reunite with your family tonight. It's not a good place. Inquisition. Everyone present was terrified by this name. That's a scarier place than prison. But only those found to be associated with witches, as well as heretics, were imprisoned there. Those who go in have almost no chance of coming out again. Even if this person is Mr. Mayor. Morgan's diary. The moment the distinguished bishop kissed the ring, I knew that the era of the Morgan family had come. There will be more in the evening. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 513. How powerful is the church? Early the next morning, someone saw Mayor Randall being put into a black van and disappearing at the end of the street, never to come back again. Completely disappeared without a trace. This was a wake-up call that made the officials of Amontes finally remember that above their heads was not only the empire, but also the theocratic church. For those ordinary people, what happened last night can be described as a fantasy. From hotels to coffee shops, stories about last night are circulating. Have you heard about it? I heard about it. Hey, why did we hear different things? Whatever, just praise the great God of light. Whether they are ordinary people or the aristocrats and wealthy people in Anmantesli, people's eyes are focused on the direction of the Morgan family. In the morning when the sun illuminates the earth, Su Tong has already begun to enjoy the exquisite breakfast and a cup of strong and sweet coffee. The only difference is that he can eat breakfast today with an open belly. Su Tong's answer to Barent last night made Mr. Morgan so happy. Before leaving, Barent even said in person that he believed that the church would give generous rewards for his past piety in the near future. Grandpa Morgan doesn't care what the reward is, because he has plenty of money. But Barent's subtext was that this reward must be the honorary reward he longed for. For Mr. Morgan, who is eager to take off his hat as a watch repairman, this is definitely a gift that cannot be obtained. As for the marriage issue, Su Tong didn't mention it, but Master Morgan wisely shut his mouth. Josie stared blankly at the guy in front of her who was 1 year younger than herself. It seemed that based on her experience, she still didn't understand why her identity could change so quickly just overnight. Su Tong finally put aside his so-called aristocratic dignity and boldly filled his stomach with delicious food. Faced with the fact that he ate breakfast for nearly 7 people in one go, Master Morgan not only didn't think there was anything offensive, but was particularly happy because this is a sign of treating him as a confidant. By the way, Miss Kioxi, I am very interested in the businessman from the East you mentioned before. I wonder if he is still in Amontes. Xiao Qian was still stunned when she suddenly heard Su Tong's question and didn't have time to recover. It wasn't until Xiao Qian's mother reminded her that she realized she was rude. So he quickly responded, he's still here. This Eastern merchant's ship seems to have been damaged and he won't be able to return for a while, but I don't know his whereabouts. Su Tong nodded with regret. In fact, he still hoped to see the face of his hometown in a foreign land, and to understand what era China was in at this moment. However, judging from the industrial scale of Anmantes, the era should not be too far away from the Qing dynasty. But since there was no news of his whereabouts, he gave up the idea. Because I have more important things to do. That is to improve your advantage as quickly as possible. Don't forget that this time the script is a killing mode, and your opponent is also a certified player, so you cannot underestimate it at all. There is another more important thing. He has a very bad feeling in his heart. His strongest enemies may not be these players. Thinking of this, Su Tong raised his head and looked at the energy above his head. It seemed that Kevin's energy had changed dramatically after the fuss last night. But that wasn't enough, he wanted more. Attracting the church's attention is only the first step, the second step is your most important goal. Although he had observed through the fate icon last night how amazing the fate of Barent as the regional bishop was, he did not expect that the power of the church would be so amazing in this script. As the mayor of the second largest city in the empire, he disappeared at the drop of a hat. No one in the entire municipal official system raised any objection to this. I even flipped through today's newspaper. Interestingly, there was no information about Randall in the headlines of the newspaper, and there was no news about last night's events, even though all kinds of gossip had spread throughout the streets. This shows that although the church does not interfere with the secular world, the power of the church is still present in every corner of the secular world. Such a behemoth will be his best protection. His ultimate goal is to successfully integrate into the church's system, obtain the church's protection, and even control part of the church's resources by virtue of his unique advantages. This is why he chose to complete his first main mission in such a high-profile way. Mr. Morgan, as you know, this is my first time coming to Amontes. As the Pearl of the Empire, I would like to walk around and learn about the local customs, so can Miss Josie do it for me, guide? Su Tong put down the coffee in his hand and asked Mr. Morgan with a smile. Although it was just a question, his words left no room for Mr. Morgan to refuse. Of course, Mr. Morgan would not refuse this proposal. However, he was still a little embarrassed. Of course there is no problem, but Archbishop Evelyn may be on the way here. Barrett had repeatedly told him not to let Master Kevin make any mistakes. The Archbishop would rush over as soon as possible, so Master Morgan was worried that when the Archbishop arrived, he happened to miss Su Tong. It doesn't matter. If he comes, you can ask him to wait. I'll be back by noon at the latest. Grandpa Morgan's hand shook unconsciously and spilled a little of the coffee in his hand. Fortunately, the coffee spilled on the napkin on his chest and did not wet his expensive shirt. Make the Archbishop wait for you. Such arrogant words, if heard on the street, would be enough to be treated as a heretic. But these words came out of Master Kevin's mouth, but they were so natural and irrefutable. After all, a bishop like Barrett would kiss Master Kevin's ring face. In his opinion, this move was already a sign of harmony. The Archbishop has the qualifications to compare. Although Mr. Morgan was not very willing, he readily agreed. It's just that he asked his butler to follow him, and also arranged reasonable casual clothes for Su Tong. Although the security in Amontes has always been good, it does not mean that there are not those bold and untouchable people. At least the damn crime detection rate of the police station has remained at a level that makes people feel bad. Shaer naturally followed Su Tong every step of the way. So Su Tong's originally planned trip of 2 had to become a trip of 4. As for the Morgan family's carriage, Su Tong rejected it. He hadn't forgotten that there was a carriage waiting for him outside the door for a day and a night. When Su Tong and 4 others walked to the carriage again, the coachman held his arms in his arms and leaned on the seat, soundly sleeping. Fortunately, the night in Amontes was not as bitter as the northeast. Ahem. Seeing that the coachman's big nose was almost flowing to his mouth, Shar couldn't help but show a bit of guilt on his face, because he had completely forgotten about this tool man. Hearing the cough, the coachman did not open his eyes, but said impatiently, "Get out of here, every second of my life belongs to the Corleone family." Hearing this, Shar became even more embarrassed. Regardless of whether the coachman woke up or not, Su Tong boarded the carriage first, while not forgetting to extend his palm to Chiao Chien behind him. The coachman woke up when he noticed someone had boarded the carriage. Just when he was about to get angry, he saw Shaer already sitting next to him, get ready to drive. The driver was surprised to find that Su Tong and Chiao Chien were already sitting on the seats. Surprised, he quickly took off his hat and said, "No problem." Pulling up the reins, releasing the brakes, the thin horse began to move slowly along the street. Su Tong didn't know where he was going, so he asked the coachman to walk around Amontes to see what the world looked like. Although Miss Josie is the guide, it is the coachman who really plays the role. That's the best cake shop in Amontes, and there's the police station, although they're worse than robbers sometimes. The big chimney in front is the factory area, and 1/3 of the steel in the entire empire comes from this great factory. If you want to relax, see that alley, I promise, for just 10 pennies, those Roma girls will open their legs for you. They are the best girls, but be careful, they are too the best thief and liar. The coachman was so excited that what he said made people blush more and more. Although Shaer and another butler tried to tell him to shut up several times, Su Tong always stretched out his hand to signal them not to interrupt. So much so that Miss Chiao Chien beside her was already blushing, and her hands were tightly grasping the hem of her skirt. There were gradually more pedestrians on the street, and the carriages began to slow down appropriately. Shar looked at the low wooden houses in the distance, frowned and said, "Master, don't go any further. There is a slum ahead. You shouldn't go to that kind of place." "Yes, please forgive me for being rude. Even Amontes, the pearl of the empire, cannot get rid of these humble and despicable rats." The steward's words were full of contempt for these poor people. Su Tong didn't take it seriously and instead motioned to the coachman to continue moving forward. At this moment, Shaer and the housekeeper lost their temper. Shaer wanted to stop it, but he could not point out the young master's mistake in the street, which damaged the young master's dignity. The housekeeper and Xiao Qian did not dare to disobey Su Tong's voice. Only the driver drove the carriage forward without any pressure. Boom, boom, boom. The wheels hit the bumpy dirt road, causing the people in the car to feel the bumps. Gradually, a pungent smell wafted in, causing everyone in the car to cover their noses. It was not the smell of garbage, but a gas similar to that produced by chemicals. White liquid flowed out along the cracks in the street, dyeing the ground gray. The figure of the carriage made the children on the street cast curious glances, but when Josie saw these children, she covered her eyes and did not dare to look any further. Those children had no shoes and stepped barefoot on the dirt road mixed with white ash. The gray-white sewage had caused a thick layer of white scars on the skin of their feet, which looked disgusting. The drying line in the distance was covered with white cloth, and some women raised their heads numbly. The face was covered with a thick layer of powder, which was not makeup, but the color of the fabric. They cast their eyes on the passing carriage, and when they saw the exquisite Miss Josie in the carriage, the eyes of these women imperceptibly showed yearning, but also a deep sense of inferiority. Shar held the crutch in his hand nervously. He had noticed the unkind looks cast by the men in the shadows. As for the housekeeper, he clutched the money bag around his waist tightly. Only Su Tong's clear eyes were silently staring at the slum in front of him, and he was already thinking about another thing in his heart: how to harvest the incense and merit of these poor people in his own way under the nose of the church. After all, in order to deal with the 9 evil ghost king last time, the incense merit has been almost exhausted. But this also allowed him to discover a new use for the merits of incense: smashing the gods. It took the carriage half an hour to get out of the slum. The faces of Shar and the housekeeper were covered with sweat. They breathed a sigh of relief, fearing that a mob would rush out. Miss Josie tried her best to calm herself down, but everything she witnessed seemed to have a great impact on her. The only one with a normal state of mind was the driver, who was humming a tune. "Stop and take a rest." Su Tong saw the observation deck not far away and signaled the driver to stop. Shar and the housekeeper also thought this was a good idea. Although this area was far away from the city center, the scenery was still pretty good. Close to the sea, you can see the largest port of Amontes. I jumped off the carriage and felt the sea breeze blowing in my face. The 4 of them came outside the coffee shop, admiring the scenery in front of them and leaving behind the sense of depression they had just felt in the slums. Please forgive my wording. With your noble status, you will never be able to easily step into a place like that again. It is really too dangerous today, the housekeeper said seriously to Su Tong. Even Shar surprisingly didn't refute. Because it was really too dangerous, he even noticed the scary eyes of some men looking back and forth at Miss Josie. I can't imagine what a terrible scene it would be if someone really took the lead and rushed out. The thought of beautiful Miss Josie being dragged into a dark alley by those dirty pariahs. Sal didn't dare to think about it any further. Josie didn't want to mention it anymore, so she told the housekeeper to shut up. Then she stood up and said, "Sorry, I have to go to the bathroom." Josie stood up and left. The butler knew that he was talking too much, so he looked at the coffee shop on the side. The taste of this coffee shop should be quite good. "Master Kevin, do you want to try it?" Su Tong nodded. "Put more sugar." After the butler expressed his understanding, he stood up and walked into the coffee shop in the distance. When the housekeeper and Xiao Qian left, Su Tongke looked at Shar. "What about you? Do you have anything to tell me alone, such as about my relationship with the church?" Shar has served the Corleone family for 40 years, and there are few secrets that the family deliberately hides from him. After Kevin's father was shot dead on the street, it was the old housekeeper who took care of Kevin meticulously that allowed Kevin to survive until now. Therefore, if there is any flaw in his identity, it must be with this old housekeeper. Shar heard Su Tong's inquiry, thought for a moment, and shook his head. He didn't even have the slightest doubt about Su Tong. Just when Su Tong wanted to inquire further, Josie had already come back and saw that the housekeeper was not there. After looking around, she asked, "Where is Angus?" Angus is the name of the butler. Shar pointed to the coffee shop nearby, indicating that the butler had gone in to buy coffee. Hearing this, Xiao Qian nodded and didn't care. But as time went on, after waiting for more than 10 minutes, Xiao Qian finally couldn't sit still. "I'll go take a look." I saw Xiao 11 talking and walking to the coffee shop. However, when she got closer, she noticed that there was already a thin layer of dust on the door of the coffee shop. This suddenly gave Josie a bad feeling. "Angus." Josie stood outside the door and called, but there was no response from inside. Josie bit her lip and slowly stretched out her hand, but just when she was about to try to push the door open, the closed door suddenly opened, and Angus, holding a cup of coffee in his hand, stood in front of Josie with a smile. "Huh, Angus, you old guy, are you trying to scare me into having a heart attack?" Josie cursed loudly and snatched the coffee from Angus' hand. Angus explained apologetically, "I'm sorry, miss, there are too many people in the cafe." Hearing this, Josie was startled and looked back at the cafe behind Angus suspiciously. "Are you sure there is really someone inside?" "Of course, it's a shame that there are so many people in such a remote cafe." As Angus spoke, he didn't forget to look back, but the look on Angus's face suddenly froze. The originally bustling cafe suddenly became empty. But the strange thing is that in front of the bar, a man wearing a brand new tuxedo is sitting stiffly. The man's figure, clothes, and appearance are exactly the same as Angus himself. Exactly the same. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 514. Angus was in a bad mood, because after just walking out of the slums, he realized that he had been one of them. But fortunately, because he was appreciated by Mr. Morgan, he became the butler of the Morgan family, and he completed the change in his destiny. It's just that he was born in a slum and has no sympathy for these former neighbors. On the contrary, it was precisely because he came out of the slums that he realized that people living in such filthy conditions can only be called untouchables. You must not be merciful at all when dealing with these untouchables, otherwise they will be like hunting dogs that smell blood and pounce on you and tear you to pieces. What a stupid and arrogant quail. Does he think those damn untouchables can open their legs for you like a pious bishop? Angus cursed all the way in his mind and finally walked to the coffee shop. Looking at the cafe in front of him, Angus gradually felt better and relaxed. After pushing open the door of the coffee shop, a warm stream of heat comes out, and the air is filled with the aroma of baking pastries and the unique fragrance of brewing coffee. Angus couldn't help but raise his big nose and looked at the coffee shop in front of him. Surprisingly, there were still many people drinking coffee in such a remote place. I should come here to enjoy the scenery. Angus thought to himself, after all, the scenery on the observation deck here is quite good. Welcome. Do you want a cup of comat? This is our latest introduced coffee variety. The young woman behind the bar waved to him. Angus dared to use all his wealth to bet that this woman was definitely Roma, because only Roma bitches could have such plump breasts and tempting sausage mouths. No, 2 cups of coffee with sugar. Angus sat in front of the bar, looking at the corners of the woman's lips unscrupulously. These plump lips reminded him of Mrs. Stacy's flexible ventriloquism last night, which almost made him go to heaven early. Thinking of this, Angus couldn't help but feel a little hot again. He placed a brand new Suler on the table and rubbed a handful on the back of the woman's hand. No need to look for it. The woman seems to have become accustomed to such blatant profiteering. She even didn't forget to take care of this new customer and delivered a stack of buttered bread in front of Angus. When she bent down, her wide neckline was completely exposed. In front of Angus. At this moment, Angus was already thinking about whether he could ask Grandpa Morgan for an extra vacation this month and come here to purify his impetuous mind. The woman's movements were swift, and the coffee made bubbles as it brewed. "Is it Maxwell's coffee?" Angus sat at the bar, raised his nose and asked. The woman nodded and praised meaningfully, "Your sense of smell is as sharp as that of my brother Hill, who is an excellent detective." After speaking, he continued, "It seems that you like coffee very much, right?" "Dislike?" Angelou shook his head and denied decisively. He didn't like drinking coffee, the bitter taste made him gag. But every morning before his master got up, he would ask his servant to prepare a cup of coffee for him, then sit in front of the window and drink the cup of coffee quietly. It sounds contradictory, but it seems that only in this way can Angus feel that he is living more like a human being. It is precisely because of this dislike that he often changes coffee brands, hoping to find a taste he can accept. Maxwell's brand of coffee has the taste that he hates most. "It's such a shame, I thought you would like it." The woman leaned down and leaned on the bar with her chest. Her brown eyes seemed to have some powerful magic power. She stretched out her fingers and stirred in front of Angus. "Coffee takes time, and you are willing to take it. Spend as much time as you can to stay here." Angus looked at the woman's chest. His Adam's apple was squirming, and his abdomen seemed to have been stuffed with a red-hot iron. "The longer the better." "As you wish." The woman was getting closer and closer, and Angus could even smell the smell of rotten apples on her body. "Angus! Angus!" At this time, a shout came. The familiar voice and the reaction out of professional instinct made Angus turn around subconsciously. "Miss Josie." Only then did he suddenly realize the purpose of coming to the coffee shop, and he stood up from his chair suddenly. At exactly this moment, the woman had put the brewed coffee on the table. "Good luck, Angus." For some reason, Angus looked into the woman's eyes and suddenly felt a strong uneasiness in his heart. It seemed as if he had lost something when the woman called out his name. But he didn't have time to think too much, picked up the coffee and walked out. Opening the door of the coffee shop with her toes, she saw Miss Giauki standing outside. When Angus turned around and saw himself sitting in front of the bar, his consciousness gradually became trance-like. The strong uneasiness swept through his body, forcing him to rush back. But when the sun shines on the shadow is like a cracked canvas. The cracks spread along the body, tearing apart every inch of skin until it turns into powder and disappears without a trace. Boom! The delicate ceramic cup fell into pieces, but what was spilled on the ground was not coffee, but grey powder. Angelou's body fell heavily to the ground. Ah! Su Tong, who was chatting with Shaer, couldn't help being startled when he heard Chiaoki's scream. Shaer's reaction was almost instinctive and he grabbed the crutch at hand and placed it on his chest. After making sure that there was no danger around him, he took it with him. Su Tong followed the sound and hurried over. When the two arrived at the scene, they saw that Angus was no longer breathing. Josie crouched on the ground tremblingly, covering her head with her hands. Su Tong hurriedly stepped forward and held Chiao Qian in his arms. At the same time, he glanced around and activated the life icon. In the gray-white world, the coffee shop in front of him was filled with a little bit of black aura, but this smell the breath is disappearing at an extremely fast speed. "What is that?" Su Tong asked in a low voice. Of course, I'm not asking Shar, but I'm thinking of the three guys in front of me asking. They are fairies, and they should be able to detect something without the need for the life icon. Headmaster, we can only see something leaving. Ye responded weakly. It seems that they are not accustomed to the local environment. Ever since they came to this script, they have been particularly weak and feel uncomfortable all over. Su Tong was completely unaware of the dark shadows he saw, and could only vaguely feel the breath of those things. Master, call the police. Shar was surprised by the strange things in front of him. Su Tong looked at the frightened Xiao Qian, nodded, and immediately asked Shaer to take Xiao Qian back to the carriage, and then go to notify the police station, while he stayed here to see if there were any other clues. Su Tong's proposal undoubtedly frightened Shaer. Such a weird thing happened here. How could he let Master Kevin stay here, so he firmly rejected his suggestion. He also suggested that Su Tong and Miss Xiao Qian should leave first while he stayed here. Su Tong was not annoyed when he was rejected by Shar. Instead, he softened his tone and said, "Please believe me, Shar. I am not leaving your protection, but I need your help more now." This sentence of retreat is not only a recognition of Shar, but also made Shar unable to refuse for a while. After all, isn't his vocation to serve the Corleone family? Master Kevin. Shar had to re-examine the young Master Kevin, who was gradually becoming unfamiliar. Just like the conversation just now, the young master seemed to have really changed. He was no longer the child he protected, but more like the true master of the Corleone family. After much hesitation, Shar quickly took Miss Josie back to the carriage and took the coachman to call the police. After Shaer and the others went to call the police, Su Tongke walked to Angus's body. After careful inspection to make sure there were no fatal wounds, he tried to take out the demonic bell and pointed it at the body to activate the soul capture. Nothing came of it. His soul is gone. Thinking of the black fog just now, Su Tong frowned, stood up and walked into the coffee shop. This cafe must not have been used for a long time. Thick dust accumulated on the walls, tables, and chairs. Only the bar counter had clearly visible marks, apparently left by Angelou sitting on it. At this time, Su Tong noticed some black powder on the bar counter. He picked up some of it and rubbed it between his fingers a few times. It feels a bit like black charcoal powder. After rubbing it for a few times, it turns into black smoke and disappears without a trace. Seeing this, Su Tong picked up another one and threw it into the prop book to get the information about this thing. Magic dust. The dust thrown away by low-level monsters may have some use in the hands of witches. Monster. Su Tong was not surprised when he saw the entry in the prop book. After all, this is a script world. Since there is a church that symbolizes light, there must be evil creatures that symbolize darkness. But what exactly is it, and why don't I notice it at all? At this time, a mission prompt suddenly came from the prop book. Side Mission 1, Monster Mystery Case. Light and darkness have always been opposites, but few monsters dare to kill people so blatantly. This case seems to be just the beginning. Mission goal: find more clues and solve the cause of Angus' death. Task time: none. Failure penalty: none. Seeing the task prompt, Su Tong curled his lips and dusted off his hands, not interested in this side task. But on second thought, this might not be such a bad thing. So he clapped his hands and saw Jixiang jump out of the hall and land on his shoulders. Go ahead and use your expertise. I want to learn as much detailed information about this city as possible. The purpose of my coming out this time is to understand the background of the world of this script. The monster is just an accident, but it does not prevent me from getting a better understanding of this world. Ji Xiang nodded and turned into a black wind and penetrated into the cracks in the floor. After waiting for about 20 minutes, the police detective who presided over justice finally arrived belatedly. This speed has already broken the new record of police dispatch speed in recent years. The reason why it was so fast was because of the result after Miss Jiao Qian reported her identity. Of course, what conclusions you expect these police detectives to come up with in their investigation may be wildly fanciful. After a simple note, the police detectives announced their closing arguments on the grounds of illness. Naturally, Qiao Qi would not agree with such a result. No, I clearly saw Tu Angus, and his soul is still in the cafe. Josie loudly wanted to tell the truth about what she saw. But this sentence only resulted in a serious warning from a police detective. Miss Josie, please don't spread such dangerous remarks. This is the truth, Josie said, glaring at the detective. Seeing this, several police detectives looked at each other, looking a little impatient. When they were about to warn the lady about the danger of these words, a man's voice came from behind. I also want to hear the truth. Su Tong raised his eyes slightly and looked at the middle-aged man who appeared behind the detective with some surprise. He didn't notice when the other person appeared. A black cloak wrapped around his body, and he came from behind wearing a domed hat with a silver cross on it. Before the detective came forward to ask, the other party lifted up his black cloak, revealing the ID under the cloak. Although it was just a quick glance, several police detectives immediately backed away as if they had seen the god of plague. The middle-aged man stepped in front of Su Tong, his golden eyes noticed the ring on Su Tong's finger, and then he bowed slightly. You can call me Samada, the divine catcher of the Inquisition. I will be responsible for this case to the end, but before that, please go back immediately, because the Archbishop has been waiting for you for a long time. Samada looked at Su Tong with his eyes, then pointed at the black car parked not far behind and motioned for him to get in. Shear's expression suddenly became unkind, because he felt offended by Samada's actions, and he instinctively wanted to step forward and stop Su Tong, but just as he was about to take a step, Samada turned his head and glanced at him. Just a glance, but it made Shear's chest gasp, and he felt as if his heart was tightly grasped by a hand, and his body froze in place. Seeing this, a flash of light flashed through Su Tong's eyes, but he quickly hid it and said to Shear, "Hurry up in the car, you guys go back first." As he spoke, he walked to the car, opened the door, and saw a man dressed like Samada sitting in the car. Seeing this, Su Tong didn't stop and got into the car. Samada followed closely and closed the car door. After the car started slowly, it quickly turned around and drove along a main road. I'm sorry to invite you in this way, but I hope you can cooperate. After all, the entire church is already in turmoil because of you. After Bishop Barron's telegram was sent to the church last night, the entire church exploded. It is said that the 80-year-old Pope even rushed out of the room naked and urgently summoned the 7 serving archbishops of the church to discuss this matter. Because of Su Tong's special characteristics, his body is obviously very demonic, but his soul is extremely pure and even blessed by angels. In the eyes of many people, this is simply unbelievable. Some people even suspect that this little earl named Kevin is the product of the forbidden intercourse between angels and demons. His existence is a disgrace to the church and should be put to death immediately. Fortunately, although there are many people with this attitude, it does not form an overwhelming advantage. There are still some people who are willing to accept Kevin's existence, thinking that this may be a miracle. Samada slowly closed the curtains on the car window, making the space inside the car gradually darken. But Su Tong could still see the road ahead through the front windshield. Seeing the car heading towards the main city, he couldn't help but frown and said, "Where are you taking me?" Samada did not answer Su Tong directly, but took out a letter from his pocket, slowly unfolded the letter and placed it in front of Su Tong. His face gradually became ferocious. "Stupid guy, the water prison of the Inquisition will be your life home." Obviously, Samada's opinion on how to deal with this little Earl Kevin is more inclined to the former. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 515. Samada's eyes were always fixed on Su Tong's face. Kevin Corleone. Direct descendants of the Corleone family. A poor little guy. Such a little ant actually tried to reach the sky in one step. He felt that it was time for him to understand the rules of the church. However, what disappointed Samita was that when he sent the arrest warrant to Sutong didn't even move his brows. The silence was terrifying. No one could show his face after hearing the name of the Inquisition. Such a calm look. Sutong glanced at the arrest warrant for a moment, finally looked at Samita, and then said in authentic Chinese dialect, Dasha X. Samita didn't understand the meaning of Sutong's words, but seeing the half-smiling look on Sutong's lips, he could guess that it was a curse similar to greeting his mother. His eyes gradually became colder. No one had ever dared to be so disrespectful to him. Just when Samita was about to teach the little guy a lesson, Sutong glanced sideways out the window. Compared to other colors, the human eye is better at finding shadows in green. Sardar obviously did not understand the meaning of this sentence. Sutong grinned, and then, punched Sardar in the face. Maybe Samita himself didn't expect that a pretty boy who looked like he was no more than a teenager would boldly attack him. He was caught off guard, his whole face was deformed, and his head actually smashed the glass in an instant. The divine catcher sitting on the other side of Sutong saw this and was about to take out a pistol from his waist. Since Sutong took action, of course he would not give him a chance to pull out the gun. He hit the opponent's face with a backhand elbow. On the chest, while the opponent was bending in pain, his fingers grabbed the opponent's shoulders like lightning, activated the 5-animal grappling hand, and with a twist and shake of his fingers, Samita heard the screams from his companion's mouth. "Bitch, how dare you!" Samita raised his palms while roaring, and saw complex tattoos flashing on his rough palms. After these tattoo spells flashed with golden light, the dazzling holy light illuminated the carriage, and Samita's fists were ignited by the sacred fire. In the name of God. Judgment. You have been harmed by the holy light. Your holy physique is immune to holy light, spells, dharma and other holy damage by 60%. Under the illumination of the holy fire, the entire carriage was brightly lit. However, in the next second, a foot kicked Samita hard on the face, and he was kicked out along with the door. Bang! The car door hit the ground, and Samita rolled on the ground under the inertia, and did not stop until it hit a street light. The car also stopped slowly at this time, and the driver in the driver's seat was seen with a gray face, and the black muzzle of the gun was pointed at his forehead. Sutong stepped out of the car, and the sun shone on his skin, as if every inch of his skin was shining with holy light. Even those deep blue eyes seemed to exude sacred and solemn light. Sutong raised the gun, pointed it at Samita on the ground, and then, pulled the trigger. Bang 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 bang. Samita rolled on the ground and tried to dodge as much as possible, but the bullets still hit him impartially. In just the blink of an eye, several bloody holes were made in Samita's body. But none of these wounds were fatal, as if every bullet had eyes, hitting those joints of Samita. Only when it was confirmed that Samita could no longer move, Sutong stepped forward and pointed the gun at Samita's head. "Tell me, who gave you the order?" Samita stared at Sutong. "Bastard, you will never be allowed to tarnish the purity of the church." Squeak. A signal bomb flew into the air, and the bright red signal bomb illuminated the sky. It was the detective who had been injured by Sutong before who climbed out of the car and took out a signal gun and fired a distress signal. Seeing the signal rising into the air, the smile on Samita's face gradually turned ferocious. "You will pay for your stupidity. You are attacking the church god catcher, and the church will definitely make you pay with blood." The speed of rescue was much faster than Sutong thought. The moment the signal flare was sent out, Sutong had already sensed many special auras heading this way. "If you want to delay, we might as well talk about who gave you this task." Seeing this, Sutong sat in front of Samita instead, dragging his chin with one hand, and asked casually. Samita didn't know what this guy was thinking for a moment, but as Su Tong said, he needed time, so he hesitated for a moment and said, "It's Archbishop Andre, he's already waiting for you at the Inquisition." Su Tong nodded thoughtfully. Then he pretended to be surprised and asked, "Can one Anminster actually have two archbishops? Are the archbishops traveling here together?" Samita didn't want to explain this issue to Su Tong, but for some reason he always felt that time passed too slowly. He was afraid that Su Tong would run away, so he could only continue. Not long ago, an archbishop died mysteriously. Unfortunately, his body was found in Anminster. His limbs and torso were cut open and arranged in a hexagonal shape, as if he was offering sacrifices to something, so the church asked the two archbishops came together to investigate this case. It's that simple. Su Tong looked into Samita's eyes. Samita wanted to say something else, but at this time someone was already approaching on the street. An old man with white hair, wearing a shabby priest's robe, appeared behind Su Tong almost silently. This weird way of appearing made Su Tong very annoying, as if every magic hunter had similar abilities. But the old man did not attack Su Tong immediately, but stood there with confusion on his face. "Lord Untu." Seeing the old man, Samita's eyes flashed, and then he screamed with red eyes, "This bastard blatantly violated the church's arrest warrant and launched an attack on the arrestor. According to Chapter 7 of the church's judgment regulations, he should be placed under capital punishment. This old man is the local inquisitor. Although he is not a member of the Inquisition, his power is second only to the regional bishop. Of course, in terms of strength alone, these inquisitors are much stronger than the bishop. It is said that the people who can serve as inquisitors are strong men who failed to compete for the archbishop and retreated to the second line." After hearing Samita's words, the old man not only ignored him, but his eyes became even more confused. At this time, more and more gods came over. But when he saw Untu standing next to Su Tong, he didn't make a move. He didn't understand the situation for a while, so he could only stand and wait. Su Tong also took the opportunity to look at the old man carefully with the help of Minji and Kimin. "It doesn't matter if you don't see it, you will be shocked when you see it. I saw that the holy light was billowing like smoke from the body of this judge. His powerful luck was almost suffocating, and his strength was simply unfathomable. Lord Untu." Seeing that Untu had not made any next move, Samita suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Did he? At this time, a black car came from a distance, the door opened, and an aura that was not inferior to that of Untu emerged. The red bishop's robe, the collar symbolizing sanctity, and the yarmulke on the head already indicate the identity of the visitor. "Your Majesty Bishop." Samita saw a familiar figure and shouted quickly. However, Andre's eyes did not stay on Samita. When his eyes were fixed on Su Tong, there was a surprised look in his eyes. Then he looked a little embarrassed. Seeing that the rightful master had arrived, Su Tong stood up and patted the dust on his body. He bowed slightly to the Red Archbishop, then turned around and bowed to Untu in the same way. The difference was that when Untu faced Su Tong's salute, he stepped back half a step wisely. A stiff smile appeared on his confused face and nodded to him. "Lord Andre, this gentleman said that you want to throw me into the water cell of the Inquisition. Is that true?" Su Tong turned around with a smile, pointed at Samita at his feet, and looked at Andre. "Your Majesty the Bishop." Samita raised his neck with difficulty, hoping that the Archbishop would make the decision for him. However, what was incredible to him was that just a quarter of an hour ago, the Archbishop, who had patted his shoulder affectionately and promised him a bright future, now took out his white gloves from his sleeves and gently covered his mouth and nose. He seemed to be worried about the gray air quality here, but as for him, he didn't even look at it. "I think this must be a misunderstanding. I didn't give any instructions." Andre denied it outright. Samita was immediately stunned, never thinking that Archbishop Andre would deny this. "I also think it's a misunderstanding. Su Tong smiled at Andre. Just now we were attacked by monsters. Fortunately, Mr. Divine Catcher fought to the rescue, otherwise I would have returned to the embrace of God. Andre raised his eyebrows slightly, and a smile gradually appeared in the corners of his eyes. However, the next second, Su Tong pointed the muzzle of his gun at Samata's forehead and said with a sad face, "It's a pity that Mr. Divine Catcher sacrificed his precious life to save me. I hope there will be no heretics in heaven." Samata and Andre were both startled at the same time. Immediately after, Su Tong's finger pulled the trigger. Boom! The ear-piercing gunfire sounded, and Samata never dreamed that he would die in such a way to go to heaven. And Andre's eyes widened even more, glaring at Su Tong angrily. Su Tong threw away the pistol in his hand and took out a handkerchief to wipe his hands. "Archbishop Evelyn is waiting for me. If there is nothing else, I will leave first." As he spoke, he ignored Andre's murderous gaze and gracefully bowed to say goodbye to Untu behind him. Untu didn't respond to this, but just watched Su Tong leave with an indifferent expression. For a moment, all the divine Arestas were stunned by this scene, and almost all of them subconsciously looked at the judge Untu. As a judge, wouldn't Untu, as a judge, want to say something when he kills the magician in the street? Even Andre walked up to Untu with a livid face. "Untu, did you let him go like this? You are derelict in your duties." Facing Andre's accusation, Untu said expressionlessly, "Believers who offend the gods are equivalent to betrayal. If there is something wrong with Su Tong's physique, it can be an excuse for Andre, but when Su Tong uses the formless power to transform the dark physique into the light physique, he is the spokesperson from heaven, at least his soul. The blessing of Archangel Michael is absolutely true and no one can deny it." Andre's mouth twitched, feeling the warning from Untu. He could only turn his head angrily, look at Samata's body on the ground, and said unwillingly, "But this matter must always be reported to the church." He didn't care about Samata's death, but Samata was beaten to death in front of him. This was definitely a great humiliation for his prestige. Even though he had denied the order to capture Kevin, everyone knew that Samata must have received his instructions. Untu always had a cold face, but in the face of Andre's anger, he said extremely calmly, "You file the report, I will approve the note and pay him the death pension. Sorry, there are guests at home, so I stopped coding for a while. The update is late. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 516. The figures of the gods, the judge, the bishop, and the archbishop hovered in Su Tong's mind, but Su Tong was not surprised at all by the appearance of these people. After all, you are the boss of a company and you are living a comfortable life. Suddenly a big boss comes to you without even saying hello. Do you want to be happy? Therefore, it is to be expected that some people will cause obstacles for themselves and even want to deal with them immediately when the situation is still unclear. I just didn't expect it to move so fast. But having said that, the appearance of the two archbishops in this place forced him to be more careful. The world of certified scripts is definitely not less difficult than the scripts I have experienced. This can be seen from the powerful auras of Andre, Untu, and last night's Bishop Barent, as well as the fate above their heads. Especially Untu, who was called the judge, made Su Tong feel unprecedented pressure. He looked like an old man who was old and frail, and his strength was unfathomable. Su Tong walked back to Morgan's house along the path and saw the coachman waiting there outside the gate. It looks like Char and Josie are back. In addition to the coachman's carriage, there was also a red-top carriage like Andre's, parked outside the gate of Morgan's house. Seeing this, Su Tong did not enter the door, but walked to the coachman's side. "Master? You're not." The coachman was startled. In his impression, those iron wagons with 4 wheels were often much faster than carriages. Why did the young master appear here at this time? Of course Su Tong would not explain this problem to the coachman. He looked up and down the coachman's body. This was the first time he formally looked at the coachman in front of him who had been deceived by Charles. "May I have your name?" "Gandalf Arthur Merlin." "Good guy, this name is also unique, and there are all auxiliary warriors and mages." Su Tong coughed twice, and was also startled by this guy's name. With this name, he was about to decide on this coachman. He took out a money bag and threw it to the coachman. He got the money bag from Angus's body. The dead man couldn't use the money anyway. "These are your rewards for these 2 days." There was a thick stack of money bags with at least 100 soldi in it. Gandalf had never seen so much money in his life. If it were before, Gandalf might have gone crazy because of the money, but now that he saw the money, his honest face showed a look of worry. "Too little." Seeing his silence, Su Tong couldn't help but ask. "No, no, no. By the God of Light, I swear this money is enough for me to live the rest of my life without any worries. It will allow me to return to my hometown to buy a large property, buy a dozen black slaves, and live like a landlord. Master's life. Salaries in the city of Amantes are very high, and a skilled worker can earn about 1 sol per month. Correspondingly, commodity prices are also very high, and the poor can hardly save any savings. Just like the famous saying that spreads in Amantes, Amantes makes money, Amantes spends it, and don't even think about taking home a penny. This situation is only limited to Amantes. For most of the empire's land, 100 sols is an astronomical figure. In Gandalf's hometown, a black slave only needed 3 pence. Therefore, Gandalf will never dislike the amount of money. What he is worried about is whether he can still become the coachman of the Corleone family. As a lower-class coachman, Gandalf had never experienced the treatment of being looked down upon by those so-called upper-class people in his life. But in the past 2 days, or to be precise, since last night, even though he was just a rickshaw driver, he had become the focus of people passing by on the street. Even this morning, the owner of the bakery nearby thoughtfully served him a luxurious breakfast. There are sausages, bread, vegetable salad, and a glass of warm milk. This is worth at least 3p. Can you imagine how funny that mean guy looked when he was trying to flatter you? Perhaps this money would allow him to return to his hometown and become a farmer, but it would never allow him to experience being the center of attention wherever he goes, and even being treated with friendly smiles. After Gandalf expressed his worries, Su Tong smiled and patted his arm. "Go back and have a rest. Come back the day after tomorrow. I hope my coachman will be more energetic by then." This was definitely the most moving sound of encouragement Gandalf had ever heard. After calming down Gandalf, Su Tong walked back to the front door of Morgan's house. The moment Su Tong stepped into the door, a strong sense of oppression came over him like a tide. However, when he sensed the shining aura on Su Tong's body, the sense of oppression immediately felt like an ebbing tide. Disappeared quickly. The tide ebbs and flows, leaving no trace behind like an antelope hanging its horns. When everyone saw that Master Kevin had returned safely, even the family's pet dog lay on the ground with relief. "Thank you, Holy Light, you are finally back." Mr. Morgan was so excited that he almost cried. If Kevin didn't come back, no one in their family would survive tonight, and the dog was no exception. While waiting, the entire Morgan family seemed to be enveloped by an indescribable force. At first, you just felt a little bit hot. As time goes by, people find that every breath they take becomes extremely precious. No one knows whether they will be able to breathe when they open their mouths the next second. The source of such a terrible sense of oppression came from the figure sitting under the big tree on the lawn. Red-robed Archbishop Evelyn. This man was more feminine than Su Tong imagined, and his slender eyes made his smile look even more sinister. Even the movements of hands and feet make people feel a strong sense of discomfort. Compared with Andre, Evelyn's aura is even sharper. But when he saw Su Tong himself, all of this changed drastically in an instant. Evelyn even stepped forward quickly, held up Su Tong's palm, and kissed his ring. Unlike Barent, he didn't need to kneel down. Merciful Lord, when Barent told me the news about you, I almost fainted with excitement. The church has not received any contact from heaven for a long, long time. As Evelyn spoke, her eyes did not forget to stare at Su Tong. Kevin's skin was originally very white, and with the blessing of his divine physique, he was like a living angel in Evelyn's eyes. I've kept you waiting for a long time. Actually, I wanted to prepare some gifts for you, but unfortunately I encountered some unhappy things. Su Tong responded with a smile. He believed that at this moment, Evelyn, who was also the Archbishop, must have known what happened. This was also his test of Evelyn, wanting to find out what this guy's attitude was. If it was a big deal, then I would have to consider running away. Evelyn sighed and said with a little regret, Andre's character is too impatient, but no one will doubt his loyalty to the church. However, as people get older, they will inevitably become a little stubborn. This matter he will definitely come and give you an explanation soon. At this point, Evelyn changed her voice, but just like Andre's doubts, Barent's report last night said that your body seems. The church is very controversial about Su Tong. The reason is precisely because Barent's report clearly pointed out that Count Karen, who was blessed by the Archangel Michael, had an unacceptable dark physique. Angels and demons are incompatible enemies. But occasionally there are some special situations, and that is Nephilim. It was the product of angels having sex under the temptation of demons. Neither the church nor the demons of hell would tolerate the Nephilim. But Barent was unable to determine whether Kevin's identity was that of Nephilim. It was this issue that led to today's misunderstanding. Now it was not until the moment she saw Su Tong himself that Evelyn was sure that the noble Earl Kevin in front of her was the miracle belonging to their church. Not the dirty Nephilim. I believe that on this issue, Andre has been deeply aware of his mistake. Therefore, in order to prevent herself from following in Andre's footsteps, Evelyn needs to further understand the story of this miracle. While the two were talking, they sat on a chair under the fruit tree. At this time, Su Tong noticed that behind Evelyn, there was always a warrior wearing armor. The whole body of the opponent was wrapped in armor, and even his face was covered by thick armor. Standing there looked more like a sculpture. But Evelyn didn't seem to have any intention of introducing Su Tong. So Su Tong is not entangled in this issue. As for the story, Su Tong had talked too much about this matter. He was silent for a moment, as if he was remembering something, and finally opened his mouth slowly under Evelyn's expectant eyes. This all started with a dream I had. Dream. Yes, Mr. Unto, Archbishop Evelyn has submitted the report yesterday. I believe the church will respond soon. This is another copy of the report we got, as well as the identity information and recent information about Earl Kevin. All relevant information. This explanation can also be explained. Even if the gods come, they cannot be seen by the naked eyes of mortals. It seems like the truth to say it is a dream. Unto glanced at the information in front of him, his indifferent face showing a little solemnity. Lord Unto, Samita was shot to death by him like this. Is this the end of the matter? Unto glanced at his subordinate, and it was obvious that for Samita's death, as a divine hunter, he would inevitably feel the sadness of a rabbit dying and a fox dying. Martin, if you still admit that you are a servant of God, you'd better keep your mouth shut. After Unto scolded Martin in a cold voice, he waved his hand to signal him to leave, turned around, walked towards the dilapidated church behind him, and lit the candles on the table. Really smart guy. Unto picked up the document, casually placed it on the candle and lit it. When it burned, ashes floated up, illuminating the faces of the 3 men and 1 woman sitting down. Pause the plan for a moment, Isa, go and feel this little guy's bottom. If he is willing, you can invite him to join the team. If he is not willing, find a way to kill him. The woman stood up in the shadow, and gray fire floated in front of her, just lighting up her long pink hair. I know, it's easy to deal with a little guy who hasn't completed the certification, but this is extra work. Remember to pay. I'll add DKP. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 517. Master Kevin, there is a dance tonight at the Tongt Hotel. I heard that many people want to admire your style. Of course, if you don't plan to go, I will help you refuse now. Master Morgan placed the tea next to Su Tong's table. Facing this boy who was only a teenager, Master Morgan showed a completely different attitude from the previous few days. It seems that since Evelyn left yesterday, Mr. Morgan has discovered that he should lower his attitude in front of the uncle who was supposed to be his unofficial appointment. This made Shar next to him particularly unhappy, feeling as if his job had been taken away. Prom. Su Tong closed the book and looked up at Mr. Morgan. Can you let GameElements be my dance partner? You know I haven't developed well yet and it's difficult to find a suitable dance partner. Of course, it's my daughter's honor. Master Morgan was so excited that his voice became numb. In addition, I need a well-fitting dress, not the kind for a ball, but the kind for a formal occasion. The black diamond-encrusted dress last time was actually a bit tight. No problem, Mrs. Enman, the best tailor in Amontes, has already called. She should be here soon. One last thing, Master Morgan. What? Mr. Morgan looked at Su Tong with wide eyes, as if he was afraid that there would be something that would dissatisfy Mr. Kevin in front of him. Actually, I still like the way we were when we first met. The way you are now makes me feel that I am more like a bandit who takes the spotlight, unless you are driving me out in this way. No, no, no. Mr. Morgan was shocked and turned pale. His head was like a rattle and he hurriedly denied, I swear on the name of the Morgan family that you are the most distinguished guest of our family. Please treat this place as your home. After speaking, Mr. Morgan was shocked when he saw Su Tong just staring at him with squinted eyes. After thinking about Su Tong's words just now, he thought about it and straightened up his bent waist. Although his voice was still trembling, his expression seemed I have found what I was like at the beginning. Believe me, child, this is your home. Mr. Morgan repeated what he just said, his heart pounding uncontrollably. But this time Su Tong smiled particularly brightly, thank you for your generosity, the Lord God will bless you. When Mr. Morgan left, he walked like a big duck on his 2 feet. Su Tong believed that he would soon be able to regain his former demeanor. Master, you can actually refuse this kind of dance. After Mr. Morgan left, Shar reminded him in a low voice. The reason why Mr. Morgan is so enthusiastic about inviting Su Tong to the so-called dance is to use Kevin's reputation to strengthen his family's reputation. To put it bluntly, he is using Kevin's name as a stepping stone to help the Morgan family get into the upper class. Go into social circles. I know, but who told us to eat Morgan's bread? Of course Su Tong could think of things that Shar could see clearly. It was precisely because he understood what Mr. Morgan meant that he proposed to let Jiaoqi participate as his dance partner. To be a human being, you need to know how to be grateful, and there are still many places where Master Morgan will be needed in the future. For example, regarding the slum problem, although I haven't thought of how to poach the incense under the eyes of the church, no matter what method is used, I believe it will be inseparable from the support of the Morgan family. From this point of view, the stronger the Morgan family is, the more beneficial it is to them. But Master, I'm still worried. Shar had seen and experienced in his life, and he scorned the so-called upper class from the bottom of his heart. Even for the Roma women in the slums, those guys who claimed to be upper class just wore a few more clothes than them. Even worse than these J-girls, at least I have never heard that Roma women would be proud to give their nephews a rite of passage. In Char's world, his young master is a piece of pure white paper. When this white paper is thrown into dirty ink, it will inevitably be stained with black stains. Don't worry, Josie will always be by my side to protect me. Su Tong smiled, opened the book in his hand, and started reading again. After hearing these words, Char reluctantly closed his mouth. In his heart, although his identity had changed, Miss Jiaoqi was still the most suitable girl. Unknowingly, Char had begun to use his mother-in-law to examine his daughter-in-law's thinking and Miss Josie's character. Su Tong opened the page and looked at the history of the church's development. This is a book that was delivered to Evelyn shortly after she left yesterday. It contains a detailed introduction to the current titles of church ministries and how they operate. For example, the powers of the Inquisition and the levels of its members are introduced in detail here. Putting aside the most basic chores, the God-catchers are the most basic members of the church, and all matters related to monsters will be handled by them. This includes the murder of Butler Angus in the cafe. A little further up the list of divine catchers is the captain, and the Samita who was shot dead by him was a person of this level. There are at least 18 captains in an inquisition. Their chief is the judge. That's the old man named Untu. It is said that inquisitors, often those who fail to be ordained as archbishops, will step down and become inquisitors of a region. In a sense, he is also a check on the power of the local bishop. As for the church, it is more traditional. It is nothing more than pastors, priests, bishops, archbishops, and popes. But Su Tong noticed something very interesting. Although the bishop is the actual ruler of a region, the church run by the bishop needs to be subject to municipal management to a certain extent. Even the bishop's church and the stipends and benefits of its clergy are all funded by local finances. Even if the bishop wants to build a church, he must get support from the local municipality. This is more interesting. Theocratic power governs the secular world, but the secular world restricts part of the divine power to prevent the theocratic power from being too excessive and causing backlash. I don't know whether this rule was proposed by the church or the king of the empire. However, a cooperative relationship with mutual constraints can often go further. This is an eternal truth. Josie was very happy to attend such a luxurious ball, and specially prepared an extremely expensive dress for this purpose. While changing clothes in front of the mirror, he asked Mrs. Morgan beside her, "Will my aunt also participate?" When Mrs. Morgan heard this, she frowned and thought of her sister, who had a bad reputation, and felt as if a thorn had been stabbed in her heart. Maybe she responded stiffly. The last time the Morgan family held a ball, it was intended to be a blockbuster, using the name of the Corleone family to give the Morgan family a try for the future. As a result, the whole story was leaked before it even started. Although the butler Angus swore after the incident that he would find the leaker and break his legs himself, no results were found after the incident, and Angus died suddenly. Perhaps it was out of a woman's intuition, or perhaps it was Mrs. Morgan's understanding of her sister. She now even suspected that she might be the one who leaked the secret. This despicable slut, one day I will tear her mouth open. He seemed to realize that he had said the wrong thing. Josie quickly covered her mouth, trotted up to Mrs. Morgan, and hugged her with her body. "I'm sorry, madam, I shouldn't have mentioned this." "It doesn't matter. Tonight is your opportunity. You must seize it. Boys of Earl Kevin's age are most likely to treat the first woman as an unforgettable object." "Oh, how come you?" Josie covered her face and ran into her cloakroom. At this time, the door was gently pushed open a crack, and it was Master Morgan. It turned out that he had been standing outside the door and eavesdropping from the beginning to the end. He walked to Mrs. Morgan, stopped her waist, and said affectionately, "Anna, your relationship with Josie is really getting better and better now." Mr. Morgan still remembered that after his first wife passed away, he married Anna again. Josie was so angry that she smashed most of the furniture in the house. In these years, perhaps because of time, Anna and Josie have become good friends who talk about everything, which makes Mr. Morgan extremely happy. Thinking of this, Master Morgan couldn't help but look at the portrait hanging on the wall. The woman in the portrait has the same charming long brown hair as Josie, and her appearance is somewhat similar to Josie's. That was Josie's mother, his first wife. I believe that if my wife could see it, the scene in front of her would be even more gratifying. Master, Angus's matter. Mrs. Morgan suddenly thought of Angus, the butler. Oh, I've already buried Angus. He had no family, so I buried him in our family cemetery. That's great, but we need a new butler now. Is Shatter, who is next to Master Kevin, willing? No, I mentioned it privately, but Mr. Skull didn't mean it. Then I have a good candidate. He is my distant cousin. He is a well-behaved child. Perhaps we can ask Mr. Shar to teach him. Their voices drifted away. No one noticed it when the two left Josie's room. The eyes of the portrait hanging on the wall slowly moved, silently staring at the backs of the Morgans. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 518. Night, Tonged Hotel. Su Tong rode a carriage to the door of the hotel. He reached out his hand to help Chiaoqi get out of the car. The two golden girls stepped out of the carriage and naturally attracted the attention of the men and women in front of the hotel. Many people didn't recognize Kevin and Josie, but when they walked into the hotel, they were destined to be the center of attention here. The black tuxedo is inlaid with a dazzling blue gem. He has golden hair, dark blue eyes, and a smile on his lips. Because of his dark physique, he exudes a more captivating temperament. Josie on the side is also stunning. Her long white dress sparkles with tiny fluorescence in the night. If you look carefully, you will see tiny diamonds on the hem of the skirt. Her long shawl hair makes this lady stand out. She looked like an exquisite porcelain doll. Su Tong raised his arm, took GameElements' hand beside him, and walked into the hotel door on the bright red carpet. I'm a little nervous. Aware of the glances from all around, Qiao Qian's fingers unconsciously tightened on Su Tong's arm. This was her first time attending such a dance, and it was at the Tonged Hotel, a place where wealthy and powerful people gathered. Unlike other children from rich and powerful families who have been able to stand out in various social arenas since childhood, the peculiarity of the Morgan family prevented Josie from even entering a first-class aristocratic academy. Even Master Morgan couldn't squeeze into the circle. How could Josie get in? It doesn't matter, I'm here. Su Tong patted GameElements' little hand without leaving a trace, pulled her to the special elevator, took out the invitation letter from Master Moses from his arms, and handed it to the doorman. The doorman was not very old. He was as tall as Su Tong Qiaoqian when he stood there. Seeing this, he was stunned for a moment, his eyes never seeming to move away from the golden couple in front of him, until the supervisor not far away rushed over, raised his hand and slapped him hard on the shoulder. Only then did the doorman come to his senses. He hurriedly opened the elevator door and was so busy that he didn't even take the invitation. It wasn't until the supervisor accompanied the smiling face and quickly took the invitation letter from Su Tong that Su Tong was able to take back his hand. The two got into the elevator, and as the elevator door closed, the supervisor could be heard cursing at the doorman. If my family didn't have money, I might be even worse off. Josie's expression turned gloomy. Perhaps it was because she had not been able to enter an aristocratic school that Josie had been assigned to study in some ordinary public schools, so she had seen many classmates with poor family conditions being forced to drop out of school to work. Su Tong looked at Qiaoqian and patted Qiaoqian's palm to tell her not to be afraid. The two took the elevator to the 12th floor of the hotel. This hotel has a total of 13 floors, but the elevator can only reach the 12th floor because only people attending the dance are eligible to stay in the rooms on the 13th floor. Ding. After the elevator door was opened, a professional cameraman immediately pressed the shutter. Bang, the spotlight was emitting wisps of white smoke. After a brief flash, the sound of music and the gorgeous dance hall were revealed in front of them. In an instant, everyone's eyes were looking towards the elevator door. Whether it is a man or a woman, there is a look of surprise in their eyes. Oh, Josie. A woman wearing a dark blue dress walked out of the crowd and shouted to Josie. And Stacy. Xiao 11 rolled up her skirt and bowed slightly. Oh, child, I have seen it since you were a child. Your beauty is enough to light up half of the night sky in a Montes. Stacy took Josie's little hand and praised. Then, before Xiao Qian could speak, she looked at Su Tong aside. Hey, what a handsome young man, you must be Earl Kevin. The woman stared at Su Tong first, her blazing eyes scanning Su Tong's delicate face. Such eyes were very familiar to Su Tong, and the eyes of the three little guys in the hall were also so impatient when they were eating. On the way here, Xiao 11 had already mentioned this aunt to him, and it was obvious that she had a very good relationship with this aunt. Hello, Mrs. Stacy. Su Tong stepped forward and nodded. This made Stacy's slightly raised hand return to her skirt in frustration. In fact, Mrs. Stacy is pretty. Even though she is 2 years older than Mrs. Morgan, her plump figure, fair skin, and her charming eyes make her the ultimate beauty for all ages. At this time, the music started playing and people started to enter the dance hall. Stassi immediately said to Josie aside, "This piece is very suitable for dancing. Josie, can you borrow your dance partner?" Xiao 11 was stunned and didn't know what to say. But Stassi didn't give her a chance to refuse, and put her hand in front of Su Tong. Then Earl Kevin must be fine. The sheer greed in Stacy's eyes made Su Tong instinctively want to refuse, but when he saw Xiao 11's expression of reluctance and unwillingness to refuse, he couldn't bear to refuse. Su Tong raised his hand and nodded in agreement. It's not too fun to watch a theater, but your aunt is trying to pry you off in front of your face. How can you bear it? Stand up quickly and greet this old lady like you are grabbing a mistress. I'll take care of something. However, to Su Tong's disappointment, Xiao Qian finally lowered her head and acquiesced. Earl Kevin, I noticed you last time at Morgan's house. As Staxi spoke, she had already pulled Su Tong to the dance floor. When they saw Stacy getting the moon first, those ladies standing aside stamped their feet in anger. But there were also ambiguous glances between each other. Although they were reluctant to let Stacy, a bitch, get first blood, this kind of thing only happened once, and then they could line up and walk into the little guy's room. Su Tong didn't respond. He looked at Stacy's body and seemed to be still struggling with where to put his hands. Due to the height difference, Kevin was a head shorter than Stacy, and his hands seemed inappropriate wherever he placed them. His clumsy expression told him he was a rookie. Put your hands here. Stassi took his hand and put it on her hip, but her other hand was clenched in Su Tong's palm, and her fingertips were sweeping back and forth in his palm. The teasing meaning was very obvious. Along with the sound of music, Staxi leaned forward. Due to the height difference, the pair of peaks on her chest almost hit Su Tong's nose. Faced with such a blatant provocation, Su Tong refused. He had never liked sloping mountains, but Stacy didn't seem to notice that Su Tong was deliberately avoiding it, and thought he was being shy, so she kept talking. Try to put your body up. Seeing this, Su Tong could only use his trump card and stepped forward with one foot. Ouch! The veins on Stacy's forehead tensed up. Su Tong quickly took a step back and looked at Stassi in front of him with an innocent face. I'm sorry, Mrs. Stassi, I didn't mean it. The delicate facial features showed a nervous expression, which was so cute that it made people feel distressed. Stassi resisted the severe pain in her toes, held Su Tong's shoulders, as if she had found a balance, twisted her body, whispered softly, came forward, and blew a breath of hot air on his ears. It's okay, but don't call me Mrs. Stacy again. Call me Aunt. This time Stacy was even bolder and put a hand on Su Tong's shoulder, her fingers sliding from Su Tong's shoulder to his chest as if they were boneless. Feeling the solid muscles on the little guy's chest, Stacy was already excitedly feeling the bursts of tenderness in her chest. Ah! Stacy's scream finally attracted everyone's attention. When everyone saw that Stacy, who was in so much pain that she couldn't stand still, seemed to have a mask of pain on her face, but Mr. Kevin was standing 1 meter away with an innocent look on his face, they had already guessed what happened. There were bursts of chuckles from everyone present, and even Su Tong could feel the ridicule and mocking looks from all around. I'm sorry, Stasif, Aunt. Getting stepped on twice at a dance was obviously a bad start. Stacy glared at Su Tong with resentful eyes, but when she saw Kevin's concerned gaze, the resentment in Staxy's heart disappeared immediately. Haha, it's okay Kevin, this is just an accident, don't take it to heart, but I'm afraid I won't be able to continue dancing with you. I'll go back to the room to rest first. Can you take me back to the room, Kevin? Stacy said with a seductive tone. This trick has been her tried and tested trump card. As long as she enters the room, she will have 100 ways to turn this shy little puppy into a violent teddy dog. Su Tong hesitated for a moment, then looked at Jiao Qian who was sitting not far away. I'm sorry, Aunt Stacy. When I went out, I swore that I would never let Jiao Qian out of my sight. I couldn't let her, people were sitting there. Facing Su Tong's rejection, Staxy felt extremely disappointed, but she understood the most sincere feelings in the hearts of children of this age. Although she was reluctant, she still nodded, of course, I don't trust Jiaoqi here alone. After watching Stacy leave, Su Tong walked up to Jiao Qian. GameElements smiled half-heartedly and said, I really thought you could dance. It is very impolite to step on a female partner's toes at a dance. If you step on your partner's toes twice in a row, you will be laughed at. Su Tong looked around, and sure enough, many people had begun to whisper in the corner. Even in the noisy dance, Su Tong could clearly hear the voices mocking him. He didn't take it seriously. At this time, the sound of the music gradually slowed down. Su Tong smiled and did not explain this issue. He just took Jiao Qian's hand, bowed slightly and said, if you want to know, let's dance a song together first. Jiao Qian looked at the rose that Su Tong handed over. After a few seconds, she nodded and followed Su Tong to the dance floor. This made the ladies hiding nearby sigh again. It was obvious that he felt regret for missing this opportunity. The piano plays a gentle accompaniment. This is a classic piece of music, lamp of the saxophone. Very suitable for difficult dances such as modern dance. When everyone saw Su Tong entering the dance floor again, they couldn't help but look sideways. They didn't know if someone had arranged it deliberately or if they wanted to see Count Kevin's joke. There was no one around them, and a large space was reserved for them. Can you really do that? Josie was worried about her toes. Believe me, I once had a teacher who dominated the dance halls for a time. All right. Faced with Su Tong's kindness, Jiao Qian could only choose to believe it. Along with the melody of the music, the two began to beat on the dance floor. Those who originally wanted to watch Su Tong's jokes gradually realized that little Earl Kevin's dancing did not look like a novice at all. Not only that, Su Tong's dancing was even getting faster and faster, making Jiao Qian almost unable to keep up with her rhythm. Now everyone understood. For a moment, several ladies looked at Stacy. The co-author is not a novice, but he deliberately steps on your toes because he doesn't want to dance with you at all. Stacy had a cold face and looked at the two people on the dance floor with eyes that seemed to be on fire. She put down her wine glass angrily and turned around to go back to the room upstairs. At the end of the song, Su Tong put one hand on Jiao Qian's waist, and the other hand snaked up. Suddenly his fingers shook, and a paper rose appeared in his hand. As Su Tong pinched it with his fingers, the petals slowly open. It's for you. For a moment, that scene simply made the women present scream with jealousy. Boom. The photographer was very keen to capture the scene in front of him. I believe this photo will be enough to make the headlines in the newspapers tomorrow. Xiao11 blushed and picked up the rose, but after glaring at Su Tong fiercely, the two of them completed the curtain call and exited the dance floor in front of everyone. Once off the dance floor, Josie walked to the window with her head down. Why are you unhappy? Su Tong looked at Jiao Qian's disappointed expression and walked to the side and asked. You shouldn't embarrass your aunt like this, she will be very sad. Josie sighed and looked out the window. Actually, she is a poor person, but she is not a bad person. Oh, are you really so sure? Su Tong knows better than Jiao Qian whether Stacia is miserable or not. Just when she was dancing, she looked at Stacy's fate, and her fortune is in conflict. People with such a destiny, both men and women, are the kind of people who are easygoing. And in the end, you often don't get any good results. She just didn't have a choice. Josie raised her head. If I weren't a young lady from the Morgan family, you wouldn't do this to me, would you? Su Tong did not deny it. This was a fact and there was no need to deny it. Josie sighed. Actually, in this era, many people have no choice. She remembered clearly that there was a female classmate named Daphne who got along well with her in school. They had a good relationship and she even went to her home as a guest. It's just that her family situation is not good. There are 7 children in the family. Her mother needs to take care of her younger brothers and sisters full-time, while her father can only support them with a meager salary. I remember that the first time I went to their house, Daphne's mother even brought out a cake for her to eat. It was a taste she could still recall, a burnt smell, and the taste was so hard that she almost bit her tongue. But this does not affect the friendship between the two. Until one day, Daphne didn't go to school for several days. He found Daphne's mother and asked, but Daphne's mother could only cry and tell her that Daphne went to work. Where to work, Daphne's mother did not say. When she said this, Josie's voice gradually trembled. His fingers clenched Su Tong's arm tightly, and Su Tong could feel the fear radiating from Jiao Qian's body. Later she died and when people found her, she had been eaten by wild dogs and was beyond recognition. It is said that her father sold her to a brothel. When she disobeyed, she was tortured to death and left in the wild. Su Tong patted her shoulder gently. Aunt Stacy is actually the same. She just wants to be braver and choose to pursue the life she desires. There is nothing wrong with her. Josie could still remember that when she was a child, her Aunt Stacy would often bring her all kinds of delicious food, and even secretly took her to watch the parade. Xiao11 also seemed to realize that she talked a bit too much today. Maybe it was because of the doorman in front of the elevator that she suddenly felt something. Sorry, I probably shouldn't tell you this. It doesn't matter. Su Tong handed over the handkerchief, wanting to change the subject. He raised his head and looked out the window. Look, the moon is quite round tonight. Xiao11 raised her head after hearing this, but she didn't see the moon, but a bloody human head hanging in the air. Under the illumination of the lights in the room, the head slowly turned around, revealing that familiar face. It was Aunt Stacy who loved her. Don't wait for the next update, it will probably be later. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 519. When the head was pushed by the wind and hit the glass, Josie didn't even scream this time and passed out directly. Fortunately, Su Tong's quick eyesight and quick hands hugged Jiao Qian in his arms. He raised his head and looked at the head hanging outside the window. Another one died. Last time it was Angus and this time it was Stacy. They both died one after another. What was even more strange was that I saw no sign of a bloody disaster from their luck. Could it be that his life ikemen has failed? Thinking of this, Su Tong's eyes glowed with light, and the chi gate of life eye was activated. The mottled world in front of him was instantly stripped of color and turned into a black and white world. He raised his head and saw a dark shadow on the ceiling disappearing quickly. It's this thing again. Su Tong put Xiao Qian down first, then quickly chased him upstairs and jumped up the steps. A waiter carrying drinks was about to bump into him, but Su Tong tiptoed and dodged lightly. The dark figure hiding in the ceiling of the 18th floor paused, seemed to have noticed something, and then accelerated towards the window. The black shadow was extremely fast. When Su Tong caught up with him, it ignored the glass of the window and rushed out. But what Haiying didn't expect was that Su Tong had no intention of stopping. He stepped on the corridor wall with one foot and jumped up towards the window. You must know that this is the 18th floor of the hotel, and the windows are facing tens of meters in the sky, but Su Tong doesn't care at all. Snapped. Broken glass surrounded Su Tong, flashing with little silver light. As soon as he raised his hand, large pieces of paper flew out of his hand. The pieces of paper reorganized in mid-air and turned into a paper sword. What's even more surprising is that he actually stepped on the paper sword and flew through the air. Jingle bell. With the demonic bell in hand, the demonic sound is activated. The sound of ghosts. Spending 5 script points, you can use the demonic bell to make a violent sound and produce a mental attack on targets within 15 meters. Causes huge damage to ghost-like creatures. There is a 20% chance that the ghost will be temporarily unable to move. There is a 10% chance that the ghost will be driven away. The distant ringtone echoed in the night sky, causing the black shadow to lose its center of gravity in an instant and fall rapidly from mid-air. After the black shadow landed on the roof of the house downstairs, it quickly rolled on the ground, revealing a dark human silhouette. She raised her left arm, placed her right hand under her left elbow, and a black star appeared in her palm. Suddenly, a dark red light spot appeared out of thin air in front of Su Tong, and then exploded. The violent explosion shattered the windows of surrounding residents' homes. Su Tong used his arms to block his dress, which was blown apart. He tumbled in mid-air and landed firmly on the ground. But the flying sword under his feet also turned into a fireball during the explosion and fell down. Under the light of the fire, the black shadow gradually emerged. With dark skin, most of his face was covered by a metal mask, with only one eye on the left exposed, staring at Su Tong, who jumped from the air. The most terrifying thing is her lower body, which is not a human body, but a worm-like body. Is this a monster? Su Tong looked up and down the insect girl's body. It was completely different from the wandering ghosts he was familiar with. On the contrary, she looked a bit like the ghosts in the Yin and Yang Dao. However, those low-level White Walkers cannot use magic attacks, and more importantly, the White Walkers do not have particularly high IQs. This can be reflected from getting rich. After seeing that the attack missed, the insect girl continued to activate her magic. Strange black runes appeared on her arms. As the runes appeared, Su Tong noticed weak spatial fluctuations around him. Retreat. Seeing this, Su Tong quickly retreated. Bang 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 bang. In an instant, a steady stream of explosions exploded around Su Tong. The fire was as bright as fireworks, but the constant explosions also woke up the surrounding residents. A strong man with a scar on his face poked his head out of the window. He was obviously disturbed from his rest and began to curse loudly, "Son of a bitch, I'm going to smash your head with a hammer." The insect girl raised her hand, and the next second, a red fire exploded in front of the strong man's face, directly blowing his head into pulp. Su Tong kept dodging until a red fire suddenly appeared behind him. Not good. It seemed that the insect girl's magic could be used in this way. It exploded unexpectedly, disrupting Su Tong's position. He fell to the ground in embarrassment in the firelight, rolled around like a lazy donkey, and fell from the house. Seeing this, the insect girl pounced down without hesitation and rushed towards him at a speed that was almost invisible to the naked eye. Her long red nails clawed at Su Tong's face. Facing the fatal blow, Su Tong suddenly raised his head and grinned. He had not used all his strength, and was even deliberately suppressing his aura, just for this moment, waiting for her to take the initiative to attack. A cold light flashed in Su Tong's eyes. After he no longer suppressed the aura on his body, the demonic aura surged out from his skin. Suddenly, a terrifying aura made the insect girl feel fear unconsciously, as if there was something about the blonde boy in front of her that made her afraid. Demon Bloodline LV1. This is the skill brought by Lilith's heart. All dark skills have been upgraded by 1 level and have bloodline suppression. Bloodline suppression, low-level demons will naturally fear you, and even as long as you are strong enough, the demons will become your slaves. This fear seemed to be burned into her bones, causing her body to freeze briefly. Even after just a second, the insect girl had forcibly expelled this fear from her mind. But, it's too late. A single second difference between a master's attack is enough to determine life and death. What's more, in Su Tong's eyes, the bug in front of him is not even a master. If he hadn't captured her alive, he wouldn't have gone to such trouble. A strike of magic flame would have sent her away long ago. She's on her way. Su Tong raised his hands, and 2 golden daggers appeared in his palms. They intertwined with each other, and an invisible sword energy burst out. Along with the insect girl's scream, 2 arms were actually cut off by Su Tong. The sword energy was activated, and the effect was better than he thought. At the same time as he cut off the insect girl's arms, fortune turned out to be like 2 golden snakes, quickly wrapping around the insect girl's body. The 2 ropes quickly entangled, and then merged into one, turning into a square golden lump. For a moment, except for the insect girl's head, her entire body was tightly bound. Bring it in and let me interrogate you. Su Tong noticed that the insect girl's severed arm turned into ashes in an instant. With the effect of the demon bell, it can be concluded that she is not an entity. Since she is not an entity, she should be something like a ghost. Su Tong motioned to Dia to kill this guy first. Take him into the hall. After all, the commotion just now was quite big, and Su Tong didn't want to attract so much attention so quickly. I saw Dia twisting her tail and stretching out her arms from the entrance of the hall. The insect girl couldn't resist but was caught directly into the entrance of the hall. After capturing the monster insect girl alive, Su Tong returned to the hotel. On the way, he also found a place with few people and changed into a set of cleaner clothes. It's a pity that the valuable dress that Master Morgan prepared for him was ruined like this. When I rushed back, the hotel was surrounded by belated police detectives. Not only the police detectives, Su Tong also discovered several familiar faces, who were the perfect catchers. These magic hunters seemed to have met Su Tong when they supported Samita last time, and Su Tong still had some impressions. Earl Kevin. When they saw Su Tong's figure appearing outside the door of Tonged Hotel, these magic hunters immediately trotted over, looking obviously relieved. So when they learned that a strange murder had occurred at the Tonged Hotel, they didn't care at first. Murders happen, nothing unusual. If it is an abnormal event, the detective on patrol or the police station will specially report it. It wasn't until they learned that Count Kevin was also at the scene that half of the Inquisition's arresters rushed over. Although there has been no official notification from the church, the news has already been spread. The church will most likely confer the title of prelate directly on the teenager in front of it. Don't underestimate this position. You must know that even though Barent has been teaching conscientiously for so many years, he is only a senior bishop. Although they seem to be on the same level, one is the starting point and the other is the end point, which are completely different concepts. A cardinal archbishop died near Amontes. This incident has cast a shadow on the entire church, and even caused the two archbishops Evelyn and André to investigate the case. This matter cannot yet be characterized as a failure of duty by the Inquisition, but if Earl Kevin was harmed in Amantes, then not only would they be charged with negligence, but they might even be responsible for the death of the previous Red Archbishop. Count it on them. At one time, 4 of the 6 captains rushed over with their teams. There are 2 more, one is Samada who was killed by Su Tong, and the other needs to guard the Inquisition. After I rushed over, I discovered that there was indeed a problem. Someone discovered the magic dust left by the monster. What frightened them even more was that Earl Kevin actually chased them out. Fortunately, Su Tong had already rushed over at this time, otherwise they would have gone crazy. Su Tong was escorted by the 2 magicians and returned to the 17th floor. The scene here has been sealed off, and Xiao Qian is sitting there waiting helplessly. She didn't relax until she saw Su Tong coming back. Su Tong stepped forward, took her hand and whispered a few words of comfort, then turned around and saw 4 middle-aged people standing aside waiting. "Wait here, I'll go take a look." As he said that, he walked up to take a look at the scene, but Josie's hand was tightly holding her sleeve. His frightened eyes stared at him, as if he didn't want to let go. For a teenage girl, no matter how precocious she is when faced with the tragic death of a loved one, it will be difficult for her to recover for a while. "Don't worry, I will stay with you." Su Tong lowered his voice as much as possible and opened his palms. A small paper man appeared in his hand. The paper man was exquisitely made and held a sword in his hand. His honest and cute appearance made him laugh. "People like it when they see it. This is given to you by the dragon-slaying warrior. He will definitely protect you if you are in danger." While Su Tong spoke, he secretly activated the spirit enchantment technique to bless the paper man. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 520. Xiao Qian picked up Su Tong's paper figurine, and the panic in her eyes gradually calmed down. Su Tong signaled to the 2 detectives who had just led him upstairs to take Xiao Qian back first, and then walked upstairs to Stacy's room. The reason why he came up was to find out something. Before it was Angus, now it's Stacy. If the former is a coincidence, then the latter has to be doubtful. But the problem is that before the 2 people died, their fate showed no signs of a bloody disaster. This situation would be called a violent death in China. Unexpected death, sudden and violent death, the number of calamities is not obvious, the destiny is not expected, cannot be calculated, and cannot be known. Ghosts who die violently often cannot go to the underworld, and their souls can only drift in the world of the sun. They can only be punished for their great revenge or saved by an expert, otherwise they will not be able to enter the underworld reincarnation. There is only one way to satisfy the conditions for a violent death, which is to kill unconsciously. The murderer may not have any intention of killing him at all, so his luck will not show signs of a bloody disaster. But for some unknown reason, the murderer suddenly changed his mind. If that's the case, why does every murder appear around him? Does the deceased happen to be someone he knew? At this moment, Stacy's body had been put into a body bag. There was blood and bloody fingerprints everywhere in the room. I am afraid that the business of this hotel will not be good for a long time in the future. As for Stacy, this poor woman, it can be seen from the report that her intestines were pulled out alive, and then her intestines were tied in knots in her hair before her head was cut off and thrown out of the window. Apart from those inhuman monsters, I really don't know who else could do such a thing to the beautiful Miss Stacy. This was found in the room. A detective took out the clues found in the room, which was a transparent glass bottle with a pinch of black powder inside. This is the magic dust. Seeing this thing, this case is a definite matter of monster murder. The 4 captains following Su Tong looked at each other. This was what they were most worried about. The detective captain named Art walked up to Su Tong. "Count Kevin, I'm very sorry that the monster killed people openly under your eyes. I swear that I will solve the case as soon as possible. Of course Su Tong will not tell him that he has captured all the monsters, and he does not expect you to solve the case at all. It doesn't matter, just try your best. Are there any other clues? Captain Art turned back to look at his companions. After seeing them shaking their heads, he had no choice but to say, "Not yet, but this case is likely to be against the Morgan family, or against you. Otherwise, why would the deceased have anything to do with the Morgan family, and always in your presence?" After saying that, Art was suddenly stunned for a moment and found Count Kevin staring at him. He immediately realized that he had said the wrong thing and hurriedly explained what he meant. "Don't get me wrong, what I mean is, well, maybe the monster is here waiting for you to come in." Earl Kevin's expression in front of him now became even more unkind, and he reminded Art coldly. "When Mrs. Stacy died, I was still downstairs with Miss Josie. Everyone can testify to this. Secondly, Stacy is Miss Josie's aunt. There are some things I hope you can use your brain to say." Art was so stunned by Su Tong that his face turned pale. He didn't know how to explain it for a moment, so he could only look at his companions for help. As a result, without exception, they chose to ignore Art's plea for help. "Just kidding, I pushed you out just to take the blame. In fact, you can't blame Art for thinking this way. After all, Mrs. Stacy's warm hospitality and her hobby of opening bottle caps for those aristocratic young men have long been known to everyone. And the confession they learned did include the scene where Mrs. Stacy danced with Earl Kevin, and then Mrs. Stacy went upstairs to her room to rest. According to common sense, would Mrs. Stacy have secretly left some message for Earl Kevin at this time, waiting for Earl Kevin to come to her door? So there may be no problem with Art's inference. But when he told this matter, whether it was true or false, Su Tong couldn't admit it. Otherwise, with these people's big mouths, they might give him some kind of label. "Are there any other clues?" Art shook his head. Seeing the dull expressions on these guys, Su Tong completely despaired of these amateur players who couldn't even protect the scene. The criminal investigation skills of these detectives are not as professional as those of ordinary police detectives. He looked around the room and activated the life icon at the same time. In the world of black and white, those special things began to become particularly eye-catching. Su Tong even discovered the reason why these magical creatures walked without making any sound. There seemed to be something strange under their shoes that blocked the sound. In addition, there are many strange colors flashing on the body. If nothing else, it should be their equipment. "Let your people go out first. This is a murder scene, not a vegetable garden on the street. Why do you want so many people to come in?" After hearing Su Tong's order, the magician in the room immediately exited the room obediently. Even Art and his 4 captains could only stand obediently outside the door. Su Tong observed the direction of blood stains in the room. Then after reporting Mrs. Stacy's death, she silently walked to the bedside. A large pool of blood on the ground could prove that Mrs. Stacy's first fatal injury was here. According to the way the wound is. Su Tong lowered his head and tried to bend down. Feeling his defenseless anus, he concluded that this position should be correct, and then he looked at an earring that fell under the edge of the bed. But Su Tong didn't look at the earrings, but looked at the bottom of the bed. There was nothing under the black bed. But if you look closely, you can easily find that there are traces of candles under the bed, and there seems to be some pattern carved under the bed. Seeing this, Su Tong raised his head and signaled the detectives outside the door to come in and move the bed away. When people moved the bed boards away, a black reverse 5-star pattern appeared in front of everyone. At this time, the faces of Art and others suddenly became ugly. "It's a demon summoning circle." Together they searched around the room, but no one found such an obvious place. However, what made them feel even more stressed was that this turned out to be a demon summoning circle. Obviously, Someone was summoning demons here, but was interrupted by Stacy and was forced to stop. Stacy was also killed because she was going to pick up earrings and found this thing. Now the matter is even more serious. Someone actually dares to summon demons in the city. This touches the bottom line of the church. Once discovered, the whole family will be taken to the Inquisition and tortured. All those implicated may, sent to the gallows. Realizing that the situation was getting serious, Art and others immediately ordered the entire hotel to be cordoned off, with no entry or exit possible. Everyone must undergo strict interrogation and even undergo sacred weapon induction. Sacred weapon induction is a test with the help of a special holy weapon. If the person is contaminated with the slightest bit of demonic aura, it will be sensed by the holy weapon. At that time, the Inquisition will not care about your reasons. You will be thrown into the prison of the Inquisition first and try the full set of tortures of the Inquisition. Of course, there are exceptions, such as Su Tong. Archbishop Evelyn has explained Su Tong's dream to the church. According to Su Tong's dream, his body was contaminated by the demon Lilith when he was helping the archangel. There are only a few days each month that he can briefly eliminate the demonic pollution from his body. It was his sacrifice that allowed the archangel to defeat the demon Lilith and obtain the archangel's blessing. Although I shamelessly took all the credit on myself, which was a bit bragging, the archangel's approval was an ironclad fact. No one can refute this. What? You do not believe? Then go up and ask yourself. Therefore, the Church has recognized Su Tong's current state, and things like the induction of the sacred weapon are not in Su Tong's turn, both emotionally and rationally. Just leave the mess here to the Inquisition to clean up. After confirming the cause of Stacy's death, Su Tong returned to Morgan's house in a carriage. As soon as Su Tong entered the door, he found that the atmosphere at Morgan's house was very strange. Mr. Morgan was sitting at the table with a very depressed expression, but Mrs. Morgan was smiling particularly happily. No. It's no longer appropriate to describe it as happy. I just want to go outside and set off 2 strings of firecrackers to celebrate. What happened? Su Tong asked Shaer. Well. Shaer was speechless for a moment, not knowing how to explain the complicated relationship between this family. After thinking for a moment, he whispered, "This is a family ethics drama." Well, obviously I have underestimated the charm of Mrs. Stacy. No wonder Mrs. Morgan is so happy. But this is a family matter, and Su Tong is not that gossipy. After briefly saying hello to the Morgans, they took Shoal upstairs. "Where's Josie?" Miss Josie locked herself in the door when she came back, and no one was allowed in except the family dog. Char was particularly sympathetic to Miss Josie's plight. There was even some doubt as to whether the 2 of them were the legendary bad guys. Why did 2 members of the Morgan family die as soon as they came to the Morgan house? Su Tong nodded and motioned to Shaer to take care of Chiaoki these days. Then he walked into the room, locked the door, took out a yellow incense stick from the props book, pinched it with his fingers, lit the incense, then sat cross-legged on the bed, and with the help of the green smoke rising from the incense, his consciousness gradually entered the hall behind him. In the mouth. He will study carefully today to find out what the Western ghosts in this world are.